and I'd like to call this segment Wisdom for Life. Wisdom for Life. And it is Saturday morning here in the South Jersey area, and I was just thinking, actually, I was thinking about what is it about my life of about 44 years that I could possibly deposit into the lives of others, and I've decided to create this sort of broadcast right here in my office during the times that I'm not traveling and during my down times to really share with you of my experiences. And it is my hope and my prayer that you can draw something very positive from these moments that I spend with you, and that you would tune in for more. I plan prayerfully to have something to share with you pretty often. I think it's going to be very helpful, that it's going to even possibly change or improve the life of maybe even just one person, but I believe that it's worth my while to share with you. And today's topic of interest is one word, the word identity. Identity. We've heard of such phrases as identity theft. We've heard of the phrase identity crisis and so forth and so on. And as I was sort of thinking about the topic of identity, I had sort of a flashback of a certain job that I worked at in corporate America. And it was a job where I worked in management, and the company was fairly successful. I wouldn't say it was a Fortune 500 company or anything, but the company was very top heavy in that there were many managers, and the management team really was more like I want to say some sort of social club with just a very elite could participate and be a part of this club. And I just happened to make the cut. I can't tell you how or why, but I did. And the group of managers would get together every Monday. And on these Mondays, we would have these roundtable discussions. And the purpose of the event was to share what your challenges were, to provide some sort of update, and to kind of go back and forth about perhaps areas that might have needed improvement, that sort of thing that should actually go on in managers' meetings. But I hated these meetings. I would do just about anything to keep from going, because everything but the purpose for which we met actually took place. And what it ended up being was a time where folks could toss around estrogen and testosterone, and it ended up being more of this battle of the minds, this intellectual battle where each individual would chime in, not to really share anything of value, but to show that they were smarter and much more of an intellectual than the next person. So as you can probably guess, not a whole lot got done. And when it was my turn to talk, and I'm really a no-nonsense person, in which I just don't like my time wasted. And even though they were paying me on the clock for my time, once I left that meeting, I still had a whole lot of work to do when I got back to my desk. So I wasn't very appreciative of wasting my time. But nevertheless, when I would notice that when it was my turn to talk, my turn to provide an update, the room got very quiet. And not just because they were listening, but I could tell that I was, in a sense, being interviewed without my knowledge, so to speak. In other words, what I felt and what I know to have been going on was folks just wanted to see if I could talk, if I could articulate whatever my challenges were. And they weren't so much interested in the challenge as they were interested in my ability to articulate them. And it was just all a part of the game. Who's the smartest? Who's the sharpest? Who's the most professional? That sort of thing. And that actually stood out in my mind today, because in that setting, if I did not know who I was, I probably would have been A, intimidated, or B, having battles with my image, my identity, and I would have walked away feeling really, really insecure. And most people do. Most people are afraid to stand, or not most, but many are afraid to stand and speak in front of people, not because they don't think necessarily that they are unprepared for the task, but they're more afraid of what people will think of them, what people will say about them. They're thinking about the many judgments that are passed when you are standing in front of a lot of people. And even on YouTube or any of these medias that expose individuals' talents and their ideas and so forth to the world, there are many who wouldn't dare participate in these exercises and in using these resources because of a lot of the fear of the negative feedback. So, what am I saying all of this to say? Don't lose sight of your identity. And the word identity actually means the condition of being yourself and not another. And using just a small example like the corporate America setting, in corporate America, a lot you're told about being a part of the clubs, the good old boys club. You're taught very early on how to play the political card. And we hear phrases like brown nosing and all of these things. And these are things that a lot of times we all, or many of us, are challenged to decide whether we're going to participate in if we want to get to the head, get to the top, or not. And there are some of us that are not able to be one thing in the workplace and then separate that from that when we leave. We often will bring those mentalities back home to our spouses, to our children, into our communities, and we will bring even that sense of arrogance back there. And we will also walk away with some insecurities that paralyze us, where we really can't function in the workplace or out of the workplace. Why? Because we felt that I have to be something or someone other than myself if I'm going to be accepted, if I'm going to be thought of nicely, if I'm going to be considered one of them, so to speak. And if I'm going to be considered the best, I'm going to have to change who I am. And that is very far from the truth. While I do agree that there are certain cultures in companies, professional cultures that we have to adapt to, I should say, in order to function. You never have to compromise who you are. You don't have to be ashamed because your voice is deeper or your voice is softer, or maybe you talk a little bit louder than others. Maybe your eyes are brown, maybe your eyes are blue, maybe you're African American, maybe you're European American, maybe you're Indian. Whatever your nationality is, whatever your religion is, whatever your mannerisms are, we are never to allow anyone to take away from us who we really are. And nor are we to allow anyone, we're never to allow anyone to bully us into not feeling proud about our identities. Because then what happens is that we go into what I call identity confusion. You become confused about who you are, you lose sight of that, and now you're someone else. And when you slip into identity confusion, you also miss the purpose for which your life was designed. Every one of us that were born for a purpose. We were to carry out a mission. We were to make our deposit in this world. And when we become someone else, we veer off that path and we don't make a dent in what we were supposed to in our lifetimes. And unfortunately, when we do not serve the purpose for which we were born, we will never be happy. So don't lose sight of your identity, no matter what the cost, not to fit in. Use your abilities. And if you're with a company that does not appreciate who you are and they feel that you need to change in order to fit in, guess what? That is not the company for you. And if you just flow with companies that feel that you are valuable, you're going to be more successful than you ever have dreamed of. Thank you for listening.